Really didn't go on at all. Okay, so because this is an island scene, I'm toning. So what I'm wanting to do is get rid of the white of the canvas, and what I'm going to use is I'm going to use one of my background colors. So in this particular case, since it's kind of an island setting, I'm doing kind of a light hazy blue, at least to begin setting the tone. So what I do is, I don't know if any of this comes through, but I'm going to give it a try and see. But I take my sponge, and basically I just am attempting to kind of pull it together and get a sense if it's got a nice feel. Then what I do is I start, and I call this my shoe shine technique. I just, like I'm shining a shoe, I do in round. You want to put it on so it's just smooth. Bring a little bit of water into there. The reason I use the sponge is because acrylics like dampness, just a real subtle dampness. So this allows me. Now I'm going to bring a little bit of white into it. I think I'll bring a little cream into it. So now I'm introducing a little bit of a different white. I'm still trying to get rid of the white of the canvas. I call this the toning stage. I'm just setting the background. And so that kind of I'm just setting a beginning tone. And then what I'll do is I'll introduce a different color down here to tone. And these are just the early stages of building the painting. So I'm now going to switch the colors so we know. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little yellow ochre in there, bring a little bit of white into it, and I'm now looking for kind of like a sand or kind of a sandy color, just as my earlier tone. So now what I'm going to do is come here. Works out real nicely. This is called underpainting, or what I call toning the canvas. I'm going to lift this up over here. See how smooth, nice and creamy that is. So sometimes I'll even bring a little bit of, I'll introduce a little bit of that color up there over here. See how that changed it there, just a slight bit. So sometimes with the side of the sponge, I'll almost draw with it. See how, I don't know if it's real subtle coloration, but I'm beginning to kind of get a sense of where the painting may be going. Bring a little bit of white. it down to the bottom course because I'm still just trying to get rid of the white of the canvas. Right now there's nothing here that's a final in the painting. I'm just suggesting things. So that gives me a pretty good feel for the overall. So now I've toned the canvas, which is what I call step number one once I've selected my scene. So I'm going to let this dry a little bit. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce some of my shapes. And with this area, I'm going to use just a little bit more of a contrast. But now I'm looking for my shapes. So you can kind of see what I've done is I've mixed up kind of a nice bluish gray. And so when I look at my sketch over here, I go, okay, this house is, the top of the house is somewhere right in here. Go a little bit lighter. That's pretty strong. It may come over to here. Then I'm just using the edge like a big drawing, like I'm drawing with a big piece of chalk. This is kind of the porch, so we'll go out over here like this. I'm going to now switch and do something a little bit different. So the fence line of this old house goes up over here like this. And then I think there's an old road. See how this is real loose, real sketchy, almost like scribbling? Then it looks like that there's some old fencing right over here. Then there's something in the foreground. So now this painting has got a nice flow inside. And then what I'm doing now, none of this is fixed. This is all just possibilities. Looks like there may be, you know, kind of like a palm or some kind of palm back over here. Maybe. And here's the gray of the roof, maybe, right here. Then there's another little house that goes over here that's got some windows, some great doors, and old faded out lumber. And I think there's another palm tree or something over here that's great that I'm going to bring in over here. Because all I'm doing now is setting the scene. So I'm coming here, I've got to make sure that this house isn't dead center. So I want to throw, and let's put a palm tree or something maybe back here in the distance. Maybe another one right here, so that there's a weight over here. And then there's a suggestion of another little house back here that would be really nice. And then let's throw in a kind of a nice tropical, maybe another palm or something back here. That'll help this composition out. So now it's got nice balance. Let's see what here in the foreground. There's maybe an old driveway. So now this is, see how loose and sketchy this is? Nothing's precise at this point. I may want to consider something in the foreground, maybe do something here, maybe something here, but who knows? I'm not real sure at the moment. Here's what I'm looking for in a composition. This is all with a kitchen sponge. Easy instrument, especially with acrylics. The house isn't defined. I'm not drawing windows and porches at this point. I'm just looking for general shapes. So even a suggestion that something like this, That's got nice weight. The weight of the canvas is over here. I've got a nice entry, a nice flow, a nice movement. Something back here. Down the road we may do some clouds or something back in there, although I kind of like the way it is. And I may even suggest a couple seagulls or something back up in there. But it's nice and junky, but the shape's got a nice flow, nice rhythm in here. And sketch and my photograph, which is right there, that's here. We toned the canvas. We did the light blue on the top and kind of the lightish tan at the bottom. And then we just did the rough block, where I'm beginning to look for rough shapes, and I began to show just the general form. So in a minute I will show you, but we've now done this and this and this. So now we'll start beginning to rough in some of the colors, but just to give you an idea where we're going and how much we've done so far, okay? Let's go ahead, we'll bring the canvas back in, please. Find some of the shapes, and so now we'll go into the next stage, which is this area right here, okay? So you can do it however you want to do it. So sometimes at this stage I find an old ratty brush that's real fuzzy. Sometimes this thick, sometimes a little smaller, so I'll try here. But now I'm starting to look for the contrast shapes. Okay? So I'm looking at my painting, my sketch over there, and I'm going, okay, so underneath the porch. Okay, so what I'm looking for right now, is I'm now looking for the contrast. And so when you look at the sketch, there's you know, shadows in here, then there's some shadows over here. And all I'm doing is I'm just scrubbing with a brush, because I don't care at the moment. I'm just looking for beginning to push that back a little bit. See how it's just scribbling. And so sometimes what I do is, this is just to double check a few things. So, and looks like that there's something back here. Looks like there's something back over here. There's maybe something back over here. And then it also looks like that there's in between some of the broken fences that are happening here. I'm going to look at here. Here's my line that I want to set. This comes up like here. There's kind of an opening right here. Then it looks like that so my corner of my house is right there. I'm going here. There's probably a post right there. The top of the railing is somewhere in here. Come out here like this. That looks good. It looks like there's a shadow right here. Probably a little bit one right. It's just foam core. And what I do is that I have framers or frame shops that just give me these, because these are scraps. Mm-hmm. But if someone's not used to drawing, this is a great way to go, okay. See how it's easy, you don't have to sit there and so I'm just now checking a few things. So this is making it an easy way in which to, okay, so now you can see, you're beginning to see where this building is coming together. I got a porch up here somewhere. That goes there. I've got a door or something here. I've got some windows. I got some windows. And there's a fence that goes here. And I'm going to change from my sketch to bring a fence over here. See how you can see how this, it's begin to take a little bit. Maybe a poster out here so you can see how the movement is going. So that feels pretty good. Then let me suggest that there's another little building back over here. That feels pretty good. There's a window that's right here. There's a window that's right back here and one right there. So that gives me that. It's got a nice feel. Then what I'm looking for is there's a big palm tree in the distance. And one right here. And one right there. Okay, now I'm going to switch to, okay, I've got a nice palm tree that comes in the front. So now I'm bringing this out to push the house back. I got one that throws some branches over here. Something's happening up over here. Now, I like something happening back over here. See how by pushing that back, the fence comes forward. Then there may be some little growy things up here. Maybe some growy things here. Maybe a little growy things here. So now, I can put this aside. We'll take a stop in a minute. But I'll put some steps leading up here to the porch. But you can see by now putting the contrast on the gray that the building is beginning to get a little more depth. I'm beginning to set my patterns and I can see where things are beginning to kind of moving. And what I'll do is I'll let this dry, either with a hair dryer or stick it out in the sun, and I'll start working on the next part. If you don't have a warm climate and it's raining, you've got to use the hair dryer. This also speeds things up. But it's just a normal one. You put it on kind of a warm or a high setting. Okay, now we're ready to go to the next part. Right. So we set the contrast. The contrasts are looking good. Again, I'm checking composition to see movement and flow, seeing rhythm beginning to take care of the shapes. It's all feeling pretty good. All these things will eventually either be greens or other colors. This will be greens in various shades, but right now I just want to see how the surface texture is going and how, if I'm getting a nice movement and a flow and a rhythm to the piece. And so this feels good. Also at the same time, most people never pay attention to it, but I'm looking at this wonderful negative shape out here that's happening here and how it's counterbalancing what's happening here. Okay? So the next move is I want to set some of the beginning to bring my star, which happens to be this old faded out blue house, because it's called, the painting I call it the blue house on Belize or something like this. So I'm going to start setting up a shade of a dusty, sand-blown kind of blue, but I got to make sure that it's different than this so that it stands out. So that'll be my next move. Either that or I have to lighten that or make this a little bit more blue. So I'm going to start setting in my dusty tones. So what I'll do is I'll mix up a little bit of blue, bring a little bit of gray into it, and I may bring in a little more ultramarine blue. Now when I use these paints, of course these are in jars, I use sponges, like picnic spoons, so I'll put a little bit of that there. And may introduce a little bit of white to the side. So if this was Bob Ross type of video, you can see the colors that I'm using. I'm using a light blue, white, and then a French ultramarine, which is like a purple blue, and I have a little bit of gray. using the sponge technique again. Most of my paintings, almost 2/3 are all done with sponge. I've just lately started using these gloves a lot more, so I don't have to take so many hot showers to get the paint off my hands. Again, you want to make sure your sponge is damp but not runny. So what I'm going to do is start with bring my blue over here, introduce a little bit of gray to it, maybe a little bit of the blue, a little bit more gray. So now what I'm looking for, notice how I'm almost finger painting with the sponge. Feels pretty good. A little bit there. Introduce a little bit of blue. Bring a little bit of white into it here. Now I'm going to bring a little more white. See how I'm just introducing a little bit of blue? And I'm going to, right underneath the eaves, I'm going to bring in a nice dusty color of blue. Bring in a little bit more blue. You can see by introducing this rough color, now the building is starting to stand out a little bit more. So what I'll do is sometimes it's kind of good to come back with your finger, smooth it out. With the gloves, you don't get too dirty. Now, the roof is made out of corrugated tin, so that's not blue. So what I'll do is switch my sponge to the other end, drag over the gray, bring a little bit of white to it, and I'll start bringing and since that's a roof, now my porch is also made out of corrugated steel. I'm going to switch in front of the camera here. So here's a roof. Here's a metal roof, a corrugated roof. There's a porch right here. So that all feels pretty good. I like the way that's looking. So now what I'll do is I will switch to a different sponge. Wring it out so it's pretty damp. I mean, just damp, not running. I'll grab my white, come over here. I'm going to put a little more white out. Mix a little bit of a parchment white in there, which is a little bit of an off-white. Now, I'll mix those two together. Now I'm going to start creating the fence. Because I'm working a little bit different here, there's a delightful fence that's all run down over here. So now you can see how I had a gray, I added the contrast. Now this picket fence is in the front, and it's all broken apart. And then what I may do is I'm going to add a little bit of a gray here. I'm going to lift this up here. feels pretty good there. It's got a nice feel. Just maybe bring just a little bit up there. That feels pretty good. Now while I've got it, I'm going to use my same tool that I like, the piece of foam core. And this leading edge here has got a nice little white highlight. See how that just, and I don't want it to be perfect. I set it down and see how it drags. I like that. Then let's put one over here on the front, the leading edge of this porch. Then I'm going to mix a little bit of a blue. There's a post right here. There's a post right over here. I got one out here. See how that's coming forward and that's going back underneath. And while I'm at it, there's another porch that's back here. See how I put it, just, I got to make sure that it doesn't compete with this one, but there's really some wonderful things that we're going to do a little bit later on. Back in here, see how that's a great tool. You can begin to see how this porch is coming forward. Underneath, which is in shadow, is going back. I've got this up here. I'm still using some of that blue that I have here. I don't know if you can see that real well, but it's pretty subtle. But it's nice and crude. Then I'm going to go in front of the camera here. Put a little bit of a highlight there. That's nice. Put a little bit of a highlight back over here, behind there. Switch to a little bit of a something right here that I think probably goes to the attic. Sometimes those are nice accidents like that happen. This is a real easy way to do picket fences. And you just want to put it down, you want to drag it. You don't want it to be perfect because it'll get real boring if it's too precise. But see how it gets that wonderful? Let's put a little bit of a highlight right there. Okay. That feels pretty good. See how that white's getting this to kind of dance across the surface? Let's put another suggestion right here. We may want to scribble in a little bit there to kind of give a little bit of an accent there. Let's bring a little bit more of a highlight here. That looks pretty good. That feels pretty good. Introduce a little bit of different color there. This could come out here. And what I'll do is I'll suggest a little bit of a step here, a little bit of a step here, a little bit of a step there, a little bit of a step there. That feels pretty good. That feels good. It's got a nice flow to it. And while I've got underpainting there, what I may do, this is the part that's neat, is I'm going to switch this over to the other side so I'm not picking up the blue. And I may go, okay, here's a fence. See how that's got a, I'm showing like the pieces, the slats in between. And so this one can have a little bit, you could do it, kind of whopper jog, so it's not precise. And That's also getting a nice feel there. Come over here. This is kind of nice. That's kind of nice. That's kind of nice. It's got a nice feel. See, I've left the white behind. Now I'm just adding a little bit of a grayish black on the surface. And it doesn't have to be precise, but it's got a nice kind of junky-like feel to it. I like the way that's looking. So let's bring one over here. That's got a nice feel. So now this is pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit of I'm going to change colors just a tiny bit. I'm going to add a little bit of a yellow ochre. And I'm going to bring a little bit of a trim that goes around the window. So now one of the things I need to decide pretty soon is where my light source is. So what I usually do with that is that I think because it feels like it's coming here, I'll draw a circle like this. That will remind me that my light's coming from there. So then I kind of go here, add a little bit of a highlight there. Now I've added I don't know if you can see it, but I've mixed now I've got kind of a dirty white. That way I can kind of change this. Okay, that feels pretty good. So now what I'm going to do, before I put that away, I'm going to rinse my sponge out. And I rinse it out and then I damp it. I soak it up with my paper towel. Now what I'm going to do is I mixed my white with my brownish yellow ochre. And I just soften some of this up just a tiny bit. You can't really tell, but I know that there's actually physically a driveway that goes back in here. And then because when you mix blue with this, it'll turn it a kind of a nice green, or a gray green. I'm now going to bring a little, soften that a little bit. Okay, that feels pretty good. I like the way that's going. My light source is coming from there, so all my highlights will be here. I'll change this up in just a little bit. Bring that in a little bit. Mix the kind of a lightish. So my light is here, so it's bright sunny day. I'll change this at the moment to a much, I got to be careful that it's not the same color as that. But for right now, I don't care. I'm just looking at how a house would look like if it's really weathered. So that feels pretty good. So I like that. I like the way that's looking, so I may introduce that color here a little bit back in here, just a tiny bit to suggest that that has a weathered look. See how loose it is? It's got a nice feel to it. This is a little darker shade of blue. So I like the way that's going. So now what I'll do is take a break. I'm going to mix up some greens, and we'll stop. Do that. This feels like it's moving forward. So again, sponge, no brush, because sponge will keep you loose. So I got that. Bring a little blue into it. It'll make it a more of a darker green blue. So I've got a nice one. Introduce a little bit of black to it. So I'm just introducing a little bit of the green color. So now, this would be good if this had a little bit of green in it. There's a, I don't know if those things are, a lot of fences have this kind of stuff in the front of it. So that's kind of a nice feel. That has there. Let's put some shrubs right there. Then let's introduce some change that a little bit. See how I change that just a tiny bit? Leave that one kind of dark. Add a little more of a... I'm also, by doing this, it pushes that tree back. Real suggestive. Nothing is defined at the moment. I kind of like the way that looks. Maybe. Now I'm going to put a shrub. There's not one here, but I'm going to put one back behind this so it'll help bring that roof a little bit forward. I'm just suggesting that this is a bush. I have no idea what it is at the moment. But see, by pushing that, pushes that back, brings the house forward. So eventually there may be a couple. So that's got a nice feel. Basically it's greens and blues at the moment. I'll introduce much more color in a little bit, but kind of got a nice feel to it. This one in the foreground here helps frame it out. And so the reason I frame it out is that I have bush here, so that goes back, that's in the background, so this comes forward, this is back behind, so this comes forward. You've got this wonderful fence here, you've got this wonderful lead in, and so what you want to do is you want it to come in and go. So these are just preliminary, this is not final, this is just suggestions of activity. So now is usually when I kind of go, okay, let's bring this into a little bit more shade back here. Push that back just a little bit. Notice how I'm not as strong, but I'm softening that black. So that's feeling pretty good. I've got to do something there. So let me do kind of a shocking color. So now is when I start introducing, I like the way it's going, I'm going to start introducing other colors. So in this particular case, I mixed up a kind of a wonderful pink. Quite a bit. See how it warmed the palette up. Mix a little bit of that with that. There's something happening back here that I need to bring into a little bit more focus. Right now I don't know what it is. Okay, that feels pretty good. Are you still okay to keep going? Okay, so now my light source is there, so that means that as this siding is on this building, there's a little bit of a shadow underneath one aspect of it. Now you don't want to do it precise, you want to do a little here, a little there, a little there, a little there, a little there, and a little there. You just want to suggest it. You don't want to go every line because then it gets boring. And I still may eliminate some of those. So that feels pretty good, beginning to delineate. Then I'm going to throw, if that's the case, see how the shadow's here? I'm going to throw a little bit of a shadow there. That pushes that back in. I'm also going to put a tiny bit up there. So now, if I wanted to, I can give a little. Now if I wanted to, I could take that to become a window, or it could just be a little screened in thing. And I'll put a little bit of a shadow up over here. So now that feels pretty good. Well, I've got the pink introduce that a little bit like that. So that handles that. So now I'm going to take a short break and switch palettes. So now, okay, and if you want to take a picture of it. So now what I'm doing is I'm starting to add in accent colors that are more on the warm side, as opposed almost just about everything other than the pink has been on the cool side. Because what I remember about this when I was in Belize, that this so then I'm just picking up some little highlights, suggesting there's a window here. Part of the reason is I want to start having some interest down here. Pick up a little bit of a highlight right there. Maybe suggest that that's a window. A little bit of highlight right there. That's nice. Let's throw a little bit of a highlight right here. See, that just kicks that just a tiny bit right there. That's nice. And so let's play with something back here that suggests there's activity, but it's not so specific that you can't tell. And maybe we'll throw something like here. You don't know what that is, but it's something back there. There's something happening back there, you just don't know what it is. That feels good. Let's put a little window right here, even though one doesn't exist. Let's throw a little bit of yellow white here, a little accent color. That's nice, that's got a nice feel, that's got a nice feel. Let's introduce a real nice lime green now, just purely for accent. Maybe let's put something right here. See how that brings that corner out so that can push back and this one can come forward. That's kind of nice, so let's put some right here. That's kind of nice. Let's throw a nice accent here. See how now you've got here, you come to here. That worked out pretty well. Let's throw a little one there. Pretty nice. Let's see this one. And let's throw a nice accent here. And then a suggestion here. And then maybe a suggestion that brings it back over here nicely. We'll throw something over here. That works out well. Now let's now we're going to throw a couple of chickens in there. One of my favorite painters, he always suggested that you bring life into a painting, whether it's an animal or something in the sky. If you don't want to necessarily, especially if you're doing architecture, it helps if you have a suggestion of people, or so maybe I'll suggest there's somebody there on the porch, but you can't quite tell who it is. That's not important to me. I'll do a little bit of like there's something going on up there, you just don't know what it is. That looks good. So now let's put a chicken right here. And another one right here. Maybe one right here. Maybe a suggestion of something back here. Don't really know what it is. And I'll just throw a little bit of color to it so it's like you just go, man, that could be something there. And then you're just trying to get an idea. Then let's throw something right here just to break that shape up a little bit. And we'll suggest back here that, okay, that looks pretty good. See if I can, now's when I start introducing other colors just to give it a little bit of flair. So here's some nice purple. That looks pretty good back there. That's when you're down in the islands, there's always seagulls flying everywhere looking for food. So let's suggest a little bit there. Let's suggest a little bit up here. So you're now all of a sudden having noise. You're having a sound. So let's throw a little bit of this. We'll throw one back here just to give it a little bit of height. That looks pretty good. So now let's play with this palm tree over here. So here I've got a little, I'm just suggesting. They always have a little bulb here and then things cascade down. So that looks pretty good. Let's introduce a little bit of green into it. And you push it down, smear it around, then you drag it down. So it's like the tailings on the tree. So let's bring this one down this way a little bit, so it's coming down this way. Okay. That goes over here like this. That goes down between there. And what I want to do is pretty good. Now let's introduce a little bit of greenery here, just to soften that so it's not so strong. That's kind of nice. And we want to, let's just throw some nice green. There's this palm tree that's cascading over. Let's throw it in here. That's kind of nice. Let's see if we can throw a little bit of a negative color in here. Nice. Feels pretty good. Bring a little bit of green up in here. Let's get some more wonderful color in here. So now what I do is I'd like to use my little foam core thing there. Let's throw a little bit of red in here, a little rust. That helps that a little bit. That does that pretty well. There's a nice suggestion here. Let's introduce a little color back here. Something's going on. Good there. That goes here. Let's suggest. Sometimes when you're going to do these chickens, you got to sort of put a little suggestion where they're like they're eating, scratching on the ground. So you got to put their head. Just a little bit of suggestion. And let's bring this one over like this a little bit more. Maybe another little suggestion of maybe a number of people up here on the porch. Don't really know what's going on there. A little bit of a highlight there, a little highlight there, a little highlight there. Just put it on and drag it down. And at times, let's suggest that there's some lights there. Maybe a little something that's happening back here, but you don't know what it is. That looks pretty good. Okay, I like the way that looks. That looks. That'd be a good spot to sign it. So, I may just add one tiny accent here. A little bit of an accent there. Bring that into a little bit of focus. That looks pretty good. A little bit of an accent there. A little accent there. A little accent there. There. Let's clarify this window just a tiny bit. Now I'm going to throw kind of a shocker color, which I've been known to do. So let's kick this with a different, stranger color.